Hello, everyone. I want to do a quick review of what I was looking for in the Arthur review questions. Number one, Arthur says that Singer's second principle depends on the equality of interests. Explain. Well, second principle is the idea that, or Singer says, is that if we can do something to prevent something bad from happening without sacrificing anything of comparable moral importance, we should do it. This is the principle that Arthur, somewhat controversially, I would say, interprets as the um, wait a second, what is it called? The greater moral evil rule. That is that we should prevent if we can prevent a greater moral evil by I guess experiencing a lesser one, we should do it. Well, the idea is that the reason we should do it is because everybody's interest and their interest in avoiding suffering or their interest in getting some good has equal weight. So that if you and I have the same interest in something, there's no reason to privilege one of us over the other. That is, that if you are required to do something, or if you're asked to do something that will break your leg, and that I'm asked to do the same thing and it would break my leg, that neither of us we both have an interest in not having our legs broken. So but that interest is equal. There's no privilege or there's no way to favor one over the other. We all have an equal interest in having enough to eat. So that if any of us is hungry, that's not more or less important than anyone else being hungry. Number two, Arthur suggests that utilitarianism is forward-looking and rights and deserts are backward-looking. Explain. Well, utilitarianism is forward-looking in the sense that it's a form of consequentialism. So moral questions are decided by the results of a possible action, which is forward-looking. We're looking forward to the results of the action and determining whether it's a good one or whether it should be done. Rights and deserts are backward-looking in the sense that we're looking at context and we're looking at history. The example of the two farmers, there's no perhaps suggestion for what the answer to that is. That is the industrious farmer who has a surplus over the winter, and the lazy farmer that is hungry. If we were to be totally forward-looking, then we would say that the industrious farmer with the surplus should give some of it to the lazy farmer because we're just looking forward to results, preventing suffering. But if we look at rights and deserts, in this case deserts, we're looking backward. How was the situation created? The industrious farmer created a surplus by working hard over the summer. The starving farmer doesn't have enough to eat because he spent the summer fishing instead of tending his crops. That's backward looking to deserts. So if we're thinking in purely consequentialist terms, which is, would be a pure form of utilitarianism, I guess, then we would only be concerned with results. Whereas if we're thinking of things like rights, for instance, say that you're called upon to donate a kidney to somebody. Well, on a utilitarian basis, purely forward-looking, you should probably do it because the results would require, because you'd be preventing suffering and death from somebody without taking too much of a risk yourself. But if we look at rights, each of us has autonomy over his or her body. So the question is complicated because we look back and say, well, it's not just the results that matter here, it's something else too. Number three, what is the difference between a negative and a positive right, according to Arthur? Negative rights are natural rights. They're rights that you're born with. And they're negative in the sense that they're rights to non-interference, say the right to free speech. You have the right not to have somebody suppress your speech. That is, you have the right of non-interference there. It's negative in the sense that it's not a right to something. It's a right to be left alone, basically. Whereas a positive right is a right, would be a right to have somebody do something for you, not a right to not have somebody do something to you. So a positive right would say the right to be fed if you're hungry. A positive right would be the right, let's say, to health care if you're sick. And a positive right would be the right to education. If you know, your right to be educated. Things like that, as opposed to negative rights, which are just the rights of non-interference. In your opinion, number 4, does the drowning child have a right to help from the passing stranger? Why or why not? Well, that's obviously an open-ended question. If you think that the only rights we have are negative rights, rights not to be interfered with, rights not to be harmed, actively harmed by somebody, let's say, then I suppose the answer is no. The child doesn't have a right. If you believe that certain positive rights are rights we have by nature, let's say the right to education, or the right to health care, or the right to food if we're hungry, if you believe that we have positive rights to something, then I suppose you could say that the drowning child does have a right to help from the passing stranger. Number 5, in the Jane scenario, was being late for work of comparable moral importance to a lost child wandering the streets of Philadelphia? Why or why not? I suppose, obviously, there's no right answer to that, or there's no definite answer to that. We should have established that in class. But again, it goes. It really is a matter of judgment, but it is the kind of judgment you would have to make. That is, you have to make a decision in order to, at least from the singer point of view, to resolve that situation with Jane, the lost child. If indeed being late for work is not of comparable moral importance to the lost child wandering the streets of Philadelphia, then Jane probably has an obligation to help the child, despite the fact that it would make her late. If, on the other hand, you judge that her being late is indeed of this comparable moral importance to the child being lost, wandering the streets, then she does not have the obligation. And I think that it's unclear. That is, if we keep in mind that this child is not in imminent danger, downtown Philadelphia is not a particularly dangerous place, as a matter of fact. So it may be that in reality, her leaving him at the bus stop is not actually putting him at a significant amount of risk. It may be. So what I'm saying is that there's no clear answer to this question, but it would depend upon a judgment about comparable moral importance, but that judgment would have to be made on anybody's part in order to resolve the Jane scenario.